Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations, where we share experiences from our hearts to empower others. Hello, Bjorn. Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations. It's so nice to have you today. This is the first time that Bjorn and I have ever actually spoken. We've communicated through texts, and Bjorn has some valuable wisdom and insight that just really drew me to his website and just to get to know him more. And the more that I read, the more interested I became, and I just wanted to share him with you all. So here he is, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Nice to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to have you. Very nice to have you. Your website is neutralobservation.com.
It is.
And I find that so interesting with the time that we live in currently. We are in a very transitional period. And there is a lot of intense energy that we're experiencing within our solar system. And you're seeing that in humanity. You're seeing the anger, you're seeing the fear, you're seeing just the intense amount of distress that is taking place. And
Right.
it's not really understood by, many what's going on. So I would just like to start with asking you, what a little bit about yourself, what you experienced in your life that allowed you to get to this point, because there's only one way that you get to this, and that's through a lot of, in my opinion, based on just the interactions that I've had with others, is you've been through a lot of stuff. You've had a lot of experience that would bring you to this place of love and understanding.
Sure. Well, I'm 37 now. But I had a rather challenging childhood, not more than most, I think. But for me, it seemed difficult to repress and project and pretend like you just sort of blend in with the culture effortlessly. It didn't work out very well for me. I was very vulnerable, afraid. I dreaded my first school day for some reason. So from an early age, I started to suffer, actually. So when I was a very apprehensive child, I felt weak and strange. And then after a few years, I became more heavy and depressed. It was like my emotional body became heavier and heavier. And I was very sort of antisocial, it seemed, sort of like a hermit. I was really just afraid. And then approaching maybe 19, 20, I became angry. So my emotional pain was so compressed that it sort of started bursting a little bit outwards. So I had some angry years in my early 20s, mid 20s. And then through some meetings, I met my partner, and I started to work with that, releasing some anger, and very gradually, sort of slowly, I started to monitor my thoughts and could see what my emotional body was doing to me. So, but I haven't been really happy or peaceful. Well, maybe for the last 5 or 6 years, but it was a very sort of gradual process for me. I wasn't originally spiritual or metaphysical or religious or anything. But then as I opened up, things started to interest me. And I can recognize these phases and stages in everyone I meet. Mm-hmm. But many of them are stuck. But immediately if I connect with someone, I can recognize sort of maybe a place I was when I was 10 years old or 15 or 27, because I've been through all these compressions, weak, vulnerable, heavy, angry. And when you go through that and you end up having a decent relationship with yourself, not perfect, but you don't mind yourself, you don't hate yourself. you go into this state where you're out of that small, heavy thing that weighed you down in the matrix or weighed you down in that very heavy environment, where all sorts of dysfunctional roles are. So yeah, I've lived in a very heavy world, dark world, and then you sort of vibrate out of it gradually. And now I'm grateful for everyone I've ever met, parents, friends, colleagues. But through other stages, I thought maybe I hated this person, I was afraid of that person, but now I just love it all. So you appreciate every stage as you complete them.
Yeah, and I can really relate to what you're sharing. I myself went through a very, very dark childhood, and I can still remember the innocence that I was, the love that I was, and I can kind of now look back and see where that was kind of suppressed, where it became something that was kind of beat in out of me, but it still managed to stay within me. So it's kind of interesting when I really look at my own life experiences. I never really lost it was there, but I never really lost my compassion, my empathy, my love for humanity. I definitely did make choices in life because of those situations that would come across as dysfunctional. But what's really interesting is now, just like you, I can look back at every single experience and be in awe of the roles that were played by all of the people around me and the valuable lessons that it taught me. And, for a lot of people, that's a really hard thing to process, because when you try to attach pain, darkness, the shadow self, to love, that's something that's really hard for people to process.
Sure.
And so I just feel like this is why this is so important to talk about, really getting us to be aware of our own shadow self, and to find this place within neutrality where we can be non-reactionary, be the observer, and do this in love. And so I'm gonna share with you all something that Bjorn wrote that really is it's a tough read, and I kind of toyed with the idea of whether or not I would share it, because it covers a lot of different emotions, but I feel like it's really important. And because I'm a 50-year-old lady, I'm going to have to put on my glasses. And I'm going to try to do him justice in reading this. This is, to me, a perfect example of being able to experience extreme pain, and to be able to look at this pain and learn from this pain and love this pain and love every person that played a role in your journey to who you are today. So this is titled, "Good Night, Mummy. You know you are my favorite demon." Mummy, can you tell me the story about how you parasitized my mind and coaxed me to repress my feelings? Yes, my dear, you really like that story, don't you? Well, it started when I gave birth to you and your twin sister, and your father left me for another. I repressed a lot of pain, and after about 2 years, there was so much fear in my system that it drowned my ability to feel empathy and compassion, and everything was reduced to the tactics of survival. To ensure that you and your sister never left me, like so many men had done in the past, and my father too. I started to turn you and your sister against your father by telling lies about him, and I instilled guilt into you so that you would not betray me in the future and always see your father as less than your mother. Then I turned you against your sister and vice versa to make you compete for my attention and approval, because the guilt is galvanized and easily manipulated when the hunt for external love always dominates the perception of humans. The thoughts of the perception of the concept of family was programmed into you and your sister as soon as I could communicate with you, and nothing can conquer your relationship with your mummy, no matter what anyone else tries to tell you. Oh, Mummy, that is so exciting. Oh, can you tell me the story about how the churches control the people too? I love that one. No, dear, that is enough for now. Just enjoy this night when you can rest in your own soft, warm bed, because tomorrow night you might be sleeping in the cellar again with the stench of mold and the squeaking of the rats. Yes, Mummy, I really hope I can beat my sister tomorrow. She is really good at memorizing the Bible. Do you think I will win tomorrow, Mummy? Ha ha, you better. You lost 12 competitions in a row last month. How difficult can it be to memorize texts in a book? You have spent so much time in the cellar. It's a miracle that you're alive. I had no idea that humans can live on breadcrumbs and water for so long. The next morning. Good morning, Mummy. You know, you're my favorite angel. What are you doing, Mummy? Why are you carrying me out of the bed? I can walk on my own, you know. And why are you carrying me out of our house? Mummy, look at me. I can fly. Look at all the angels around us. They're so shiny. And you too, Mummy. You're an angel too. I knew it. I always knew you're an angel, Mummy. Mummy, can you hear me? Mummy, why are you digging a hole in the garden? Oh, look, Mummy. I can see myself in the grass, but I'm flying too. I'm so happy. I'm not hungry anymore, Mummy. It feels so good. Why are you crying, Mummy? Look at me, Mummy. Look at me. Can you hear the angels? Can you hear them sing, Mummy? I will whisper this song in your ear every time you go to sleep. I am happy now, Mummy. Don't cry, Mummy. You're my favorite angel. You will always be my favorite angel. The Song of the Angels. So deep into the darkness you ventured, because we needed someone to shine a light into the place where children are captured. One child has gone to heaven, and the other will bring heaven to earth. Her sister will survive and tell the world that a lonely heart builds the darkest church.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. That is, when I read it, there was so much emotion.
Yeah.
I could feel it. I had chills all over my body, and I felt it, and I felt just a great sense of love. And I could take this, and I know so many people that would hear this would be able to relate to this, because we've all come through different things, and some more so than others. What inspired this?
I was going to work. It was rather late. I worked the night shift. I work in a shop where we sell wraps, and we sell them to drunk people at night too. So, and I was talking to my friend, and all of a sudden I could just, the first couple of sentences just came through, and I saw this picture, and I thought, this is a quick one, you know, because it's all, sometimes when I write, it's all there. I suppose some would call that a download or whatever. But I write in different manners, and one of those things that happen is it's like a package, and you just have to write it down. It's all there. I don't have to think. I don't have to plan. So that one came through very quickly. It was with emotion. It was with depth. It was sort of had an edge, and I understood what it was about. So, and I knew that, you know, it would be sort of like a key, a trigger. It could touch people, and I knew that some would shy away and maybe be a little bit angry.
Mm-hmm.
Others would be able to release tears. Some would recognize patterns that drives, churches and, political institutions, whatever. A family can be driven like a guilt machine in a church too. So you had all these layers in one little story there. And I think the first or second read is the most effective, because people are surprised when they read that. And that was the first sort of type of story that had that effect on people. I've written all sorts of things, but that was a possibility for people to be surprised and sort of all of a sudden be in something that would shock them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have noticed that not all people are sort of ready to process that, but it's actually a very well used pattern. It's as old as humanity when it comes to the study of illusion and pain and sorrow. That's a pattern we have to process, all of us, individually and collectively, because it's targeting our children, and it continues in the grown human form as well. So the child is frozen, and then you the cultures are very cunning and strange on that level, because you're trained to be an adult, and you're trained now you're supposed to be, you're 14 or you're 16, you're 18, now you're 20, but the child is still hijacked and frozen, and then starts to search for an external parent in a religion or politics or another husband or another wife.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a key moment. So that's why conscious parenting is so important. Not perfect parents, but just conscious enough to love your child and say, you're already perfect. Maybe you can learn to read and 1 + 1 is 2, but you're already perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very tricky pattern. It's a little bit hidden for most people, hidden in plain view, but we need to process it.
Yeah, I agree with that very much. And it's, I've said I have adult twins, a boy and a girl, and they are 28 years old. And coming from the childhood that I didn't come in a whole complete package with, this perfect parental skill set. I was functioning in survival mode for the most part of my life. And they always knew that they were loved and they were always taken care of. But there's always things that you do that create pockets of insecurity within them because of your own challenges. And for me personally, I feel like I was kind of growing up with them. That's really the way that it felt.
Right.
And because I had had such a repressive childhood, I didn't act out as a kid. I didn't go through the wild teen years or anything. So I actually went through that like in my mid-30s. So my children as teenagers got to see me be a teenager when I was in my mid-30s, and they're like, what is going on? And so that was actually that time in my life where it was very transformative, because I was kind of that inner child had to come up at some point.
Yeah. And
have that occur. It's just traumatizing to your kids because they're not wanting to be raised by a teenager. They want a mom, So we had things that we had to, sort through. So one of the things that was really clear to me as I began I don't really like the term awakening so much, because I feel like we're still we always have so much further to go than where we are, but becoming aware. I knew that I had to have conversations with my children and acknowledge anything that needed to be dealt with. And so there was a lot of things that came up, especially with my daughter and I, where I was trying to be protective of her or give her freedom because I didn't have freedom. And she associated that with not caring or which was really interesting to me because I had been so suppressed. I associated that with not caring, and I was trying to give her freedom. And the opposite. So that's really, conscious parenting is so very important. One thing I want to read too, after reading what you had written, I came across this and I thought this was really perfect to tie in with what you had written, and it's by Dr. Brian Weiss. And it says, sometimes the soul will choose a particularly challenging lifetime in order to accelerate its spiritual progress or as an act of love to help others who are also going through a difficult lifetime. A hard life is not a punishment, but rather an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Oh, see, I feel that deep within my cellular structure. I feel that. And I feel like that's why I never felt like a victim through the things that I was going through. And I just feel like, just with what you just really inspire me. The way that you write and your depth of understanding is just very inspirational. I feel like you could be such a huge value to those of us that have struggled with being able to be that observer.
Thank you so much. And every one of us, is that resource, is that inspiration. And just sharing with you now, you've opened me much more than you realize, because you grew together with your children as equals. Some days they were the teachers, other days you were the teacher. The teacher student theme energies are intertwined. They're alive. It's a system that's alive. It's reciprocal. So it's not the absolute teacher that has all the answers. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
It's a growing process. And I've learned equally from children, from elderly people. You can learn from small situations, longer phases. So it's a system that's alive.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we need these very compressed, dark challenges
Mm-hmm.
to be inspired to look at what binds us to it. And other times we have these light, inspirational ones. So, I look at my interactions now. My mother and father have passed away, but I see I've learned so much from them, how I was, how they were, how we were as three, and then how we were as two when my mother passed away first, how that continued in me.
You're having a little bit of you're having a little bit of interference. There's a high pitch something beeping when you're talking.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's me.
Okay, try now.
Is it,
It's
is it
better.
gone?
It seems like it.
All right. So every person I've ever met has, taught me something, inspired something, and I'm having my childhood now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having my teenage years now, as they are described in the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like an elderly person, but not weak or old. I feel sort of very at peace, and I can see life as if I've already experienced some things and I'm just sort of at peace. It's like I'm in a rocking chair. The next day I can be a confused child again. So it's like the energies of child, adult, teenager. It's like I feel it's like phases that again are alive. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't rely on linear time, and it's not as predictable as the culture has said. I haven't experienced that anyway. I feel that it's a different sort of process. Yeah, my child is happy, so I'm having my childhood now. I feel more playful than ever and curious than ever and open. And so you don't have to have your childhood when you're 5. You can actually defrost that and live it out when you're 40 or 50 or 60.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes you're not really given an option as a child to be a child.
Right.
I don't know the exact, situation. I'd like for you to maybe share a little bit more about your growing up.
Yeah.
I know for me, my mother was, she had experienced a lot of trauma in her childhood, and it was kind of overlooked. And I think she never really was allowed the recognition from those around her to just to be honest and admit that, because she was born in the 40s, and so back in that time period, everything was secretive and hush hush, and any
Yeah.
kind of family dramas or traumas were always hidden, and if anything negative happened, it was just shut down, and
Exactly.
it was a deep buried secret within the family. And so she brought a lot of that into her adult life, and very much so, she was dependent on me in many ways to be her mother. And so I was really doing a lot of parenting from the time that I can remember, from being very young. I mean, as young as 7 years old, I can remember parenting and taking care of others in my family.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and so there was never this opportunity for me to be a kid.
Right.
And so that's why, and so it actually, in my early adult years, that was still part of who I was. So I was very serious and very focused, and, going to school, working 2 to 3 jobs at a time, trying to build this life, never allowed myself to be free, to just have fun like, most people my age would have. That's why it came out so much later. And now it's true. Like, I feel so grateful for everything. I feel like I've lived, in my one lifetime, it feels like I've lived like 100 because I've experienced so many different things.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. And so it's just like, really, I just feel so grateful, because it's like, wow, I mean, I have so much to be thankful for. To have had so much come through in 50 years is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And everything, it feels, all of a sudden, it feels like an inspiration, and it means something. It's like, all right, it's not random. It's not just adversity. It means something. This is, oh my God, I can do this.
Yeah.
And it's such a relief that we have the power to change our lives through our relationship with ourselves, so that we can monitor our thoughts, that we can heal our repressed emotions. That's good news.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. And it can be hard, but it's quicker and it's worth it, rather than repressing and going, for 25 incarnations when you can maybe use a month
Yeah.
to heal and accelerate that.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. And well, with regards to my parents, the main patterning there was that my mother dominated my father, and she turned me against my father from the age of 5 or 6. So that was the main patterning. What I came to realize later was that she had lost custody of 2 of her children many, many years ago. And she had a difficult life before she came to my hometown and married my father. We didn't know all about that. So when I grew up, I was under some form of mind control, which I released later. But now I can see that it wasn't, evil isn't, or darkness isn't just something to. It doesn't just want to wreak havoc just for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reasoning, a logic to insanity as well. And what happened is that she was so afraid to lose another child because she sensed that I preferred my father. So because of desperation, she started to control. She started to listen to her negative thinking, and then she started to control me. And so it's like she didn't feel loved. She didn't love herself. She felt that another child could be taken away from her, and those thoughts really frightened her, and then she succumbed to those tactics, and I don't mind at all these days because it learned me so much. It taught me so much. I was inside the system, now I'm out of it. I can recognize the patterns in other systems, individuals, collectives, and the cultures. So it's all good now. And she's not even dead. They're not dead. They're in another form. Mm-hmm. So it's all good news. Right. And you go on. So yeah, that's the main patterning of my family life. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that you brought up the fear of losing another child, because it feels like to me that the bulk of our decisions that are out of our true organic nature of love they do stem from fear.
Yeah.
And that's part, to me, like, the greater the challenges we face, the greater the wisdom that we attain. But when we're in the middle of it, when we're feeling all these things and we're not aware of what's going on, this is extreme pain. And, this is just like part of, the duality that we exist in. I mean, it's like thrilling because there's so many exciting things that can happen, but it's also terrifying, and you're fragmented from your whole self. And ultimately you're always connected to your higher self. There is a connection, but there is a fragmented version in this reality. And so something else that you wrote about was loneliness. And so when I was thinking about how we go through compression, and we're perceiving good versus evil, and we are in these fear-based realities, and one of the things that came up was the loneliness. Sure. And I had seen something else that you had written on loneliness, and I have said to other people, I don't get lonely, and it really baffles people around me because they don't understand how I couldn't experience loneliness. And for me, the only way that I can term it is that because of the way that I grew up, I was self-sufficient for the most part, and I had to do so many things in isolation that were just it was either severe, abuse and, mind control, manipulation, all these kinds of things going on in my childhood. And so my sanctuary, my sacred space was being alone.
Yeah.
And so for me, loneliness or alone time represented peace and safety, and it was a good space for me. So that's why I don't go through loneliness. But you talk about the illusion of loneliness. I'd like for you to share what your thoughts on that are.
Well, loneliness is an illusion that that was never my main hex or my main egoic curse. I did think at some point that I was evil. that I was ugly, that God didn't exist, that the devil had sort of like an independent energy. It was like a force. I didn't know that the darkness was parasitical in nature, but you have to identify with it. So I felt that I was weird, and I felt lesser than the world, lesser than the people around me. Loneliness is something I've studied in others, and I've seen that since birth in my biological parents, my classmates, my friends, my colleagues, that it drives them mad. Loneliness is a horrible thing, and it makes people run. It makes them hasty and desperate, and they search and search and search, and it's like a haunting where they can switch multiple partners, or they succumb to control. It's like it seems to me like it's such an incredible illusion, because everything is interconnected in this universe. You can't, it's all one, and that's just a fact that's more and more being realized now. So the loneliness, if people believe and feel that they're lonely, it drives them absolutely mad, and they go into it can happen in many ways. They go into relationships where they feel that they can control the other. Of course, they're driven by these mechanisms. They're unconscious, but that's the reason why they go into relationships, because they can control. They seek out people they can control, because then they won't experience, the horror of being abandoned or left.
Mm-hmm.
So they already feel abandoned and left. They already feel lonely, but they project that, and they try to make sure that doesn't happen. But actually, they are creating their own nightmare, because if you're really haunted by loneliness, and if you feel that you're not worthy of being loved, and you are secluded, you end up pushing people away.
Mm-hmm.
Or you end up exaggerating and controlling a lot of people, or one person, to an extreme degree.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like loneliness is one of the core incredible pains, incredible fears, that and it's weird, because you can be lonely and be married for 50 years. You can have a big family. You can have you can seemingly be popular, but you die alone.
Mm-hmm.
You never really, because it was all role playing. And it sounds like I'm criticizing it, but I'm not. I've seen this.
Mm-hmm.
You can be physically alone and then you die alone, but you can be a social. People can consider a person very social, because he or she has spent their entire life trying to gather people around them. But they never shut that feeling, because you have to be together with yourself to heal loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to feel, if you feel alone with yourself, as that means that you're disconnected from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feeling. Sometimes the thoughts are not directly corresponding. They're not saying you're alone with yourself or whatever it is, but it's like this sensation, this feeling of disconnect, which is absolutely horrifying. But to release that, it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 friends or you're famous. Even people can worship you. I'm sure many kings and queens have died alone because they never felt accepted. So they tried all their lives, and maybe for many incarnations as well, they try to solve that problem externally. But then one lifetime, they realized, I have to be together with myself to heal loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe you'll have many friends or not. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have seen those that are really desperately afraid of being lonely and are very lonely. And what I found very interesting about that is the lonelier they are, and the more desperate that comes across, the more that they're insistent upon you fulfilling that loneliness in them. They can't see it, that they have to fulfill it in themselves, so they'll put it all on you to make them feel for you to fill that void of loneliness. And,
Mm.
and in doing so, actually the opposite occurs. They become
Yeah.
so desperate, they become almost, they become aggressive, and they become a little bit stalkerish and wanting your attention.
Sure.
And it has the opposite effect. It pushes someone else away, and then that creates a deeper feeling of, I'm not worthy, and no one loves me, and they're seeking this love and this need to fill this void, and it can never be filled outside of yourself. It can no one can ever fill that. In fact, there was a time when I was going through some things, and with my husband, I had, I kept thinking that I needed certain things from him to make me
Mm.
feel okay. And it was, as he would try to give me those things that I was asking for, I found that it wasn't fixing anything. It didn't matter what I thought I wanted from him.
Sure.
It really had to come from within me.
Yeah.
And so once I realized that, I was able to take that pressure off of him or anyone around me to say that someone else could complete me or fix this in me, because I am the only one that can fill these spots of void. I'm the only one that can love myself enough. It is
Sure.
truly self-love, self-acceptance.
I agree. And
Yeah.
I remember all these different characters in my lifetime that I didn't understand before. I remember one a schoolmate, and I always saw him as very social, and he said that as well. I'm so social, I love my friends. I'm so social, I love my friends. And I always thought, my God, he's really charming.
Mm-hmm.
But later, but I did have a sort of a problem with his energy. I didn't understand why, but he came a lot to my house, and then, but he had his parties, and he seemed to be very popular. But then later on, I saw that he was actually very lonely, and he had to spend a lot of energy being around other people. And he channeled sort of all of his intellect and all of his qualities sort of into trying to be popular, trying to sort of convince people and be charming, and it, if you're shallow, if you only look at these shallow mechanisms, you can say, oh, he's popular, he has a lot of friends, but he was lonely.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a desperation, and it's an ongoing, like a hex, like something you can't run from your own shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he was so intense, and that's why he was always around others, because he couldn't stand to be alone with himself.
Mm-hmm.
And many other types of, so many, you see the practicality of this on a darker level when you choose a partner you can dominate. And why would you do that? Is it because you like pain, you like to make people suffer? No, not really. It's because you have absolute control over not being abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the trick. That's the thing. All right, good luck. It doesn't work. It's just it brings both people even further down, and you're not happy. But it's like this hex that people go into, and it's common. It's common. It's just many people haven't noticed how this works.
Mm-hmm.
And loneliness is this repressed, unprocessed thing that is accepted. It's weird.
Yeah. Something you were talking about when you went into your childhood, and because this is really, I want to kind of go back to this because I feel like will be really helpful. When you were talking about the darkness, and you said, like you felt like you weren't, that you were ugly, or that you weren't good
Yeah.
enough, and all these things, and then you started talking about the darkness, and you said, and darkness is parasitic.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go into that just to help
Yeah.
others understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah. I remember when I started to think a little bit, maybe 15 or 16 years of age. I remember very quickly coming to the conclusion that darkness had real power. Now, of course, I've seen horror movies, and I did feel weak. And the culture does explain that you can be possessed, and it has power. So of course you go into that, and that's a very serious step. That's a very crucial and important step, because You accept that something outside of you can dominate you without, your will, without your approval. And that's very frightening. It's actually very, very frightening. Gradually, through the years, I saw that that was a part of my victim role, which gladly accepted anything to blame. It's the devil, or whatever, a colleague or a family member. That's fine, but that was a part of the victim role structure that blames something or someone, or the culture or the country or politics, whatever it is. But gradually when you heal, I learned that, all right, maybe it's because I identified with certain thoughts and I repressed rather than processed and healed my feelings or repressed emotions. So very gradually I saw that I have to be the garden from which dysfunction blooms. I have to be the portal through which those energies come. I have to be the energy. I have to be the battery that feeds the shadow. So gradually, and then it dawned on me, and then, so for me now, this is not as much a war as a process of identification. And I've seen that when I unconsciously channeled a lot of energy into being afraid through the victim role, what drove me unconsciously, the darkness, became stronger. So, and that's like a big shift. For me. It sort of dawned on me very slowly, and now I take responsibility. I understand that if something is manifested, some sort of situation or person, it's me, because I'm the only one in town. It's me. And then I'm not saying I'm solving it, within a few seconds. It might take time, but I don't go into the blame. I understand that at some level here, I've created something. And I'm a constant time traveler like anybody else. You deal with the echoes of the past. You can deal with the momentum you created in another life.
Yes.
It comes back and says, hello, is this your reality? So you can actually heal 2 or 3 lifetimes through a difficult situation with a colleague that lasts 3 months. You can heal something from another lifetime through an interaction with a neighbor that lasts about a year. You never know, because we always create these repetitions in order to finish them, So when I realized that, and I didn't blame, and I understood that only I could give momentum to darkness, I started to feed it less and less. Don't believe in the negative thinking or the lies, thoughts being then like the media, pictures, commentary, lies, false roles, whatever,
Right.
Distractions, diversions. And if something came up, a fear, anger, whatever, I tried more and more to let it come, rather than pushing it down and say, that's on you,
So that's awesome. And I want to thank you, because you actually made me aware of something where I wasn't really being honest with myself when I was saying I didn't feel like a victim. Well, I didn't blame anyone. That's probably a better way to express that, because it's some of my behaviors would have shown that I was actually being a victim with the fear. When you were just talking about how fear, comes from like being a victim. So I can remember, and this is something that I could never understand. I couldn't get why this was always happening to me. But as a little girl, up into my teen years, even into my early adult years, I couldn't walk home from school. I couldn't leave my classroom without being chased to a school bus.
Wow.
I couldn't walk home from school without being chased by a group of boys, even if it was just like a taunting, like, hey, little girl, we're going to get you, little girl, and
Oh
stomping
my
behind
God.
me or something like that. It would be little things like that that were
Yeah.
constant. And so, it's so funny because I look now and, back then, of course, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
But now I can laugh about it because it seems like I was just constantly running and hiding.
Yeah. I would too.
So, I mean, it was even like if I went to a store at 10 o'clock at night because I needed to get toothpaste or something that I had forgotten.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be going down an aisle, and then there's someone looking at me down the aisle, and then they follow me to the checkout and they follow me
Oh
to
my
the car.
God.
It was stuff like this my whole life.
Oh my God.
And it was really, and I kept thinking, even I would have, people that were interested in me that really just wanted my attention that shouldn't be. And I can remember, having boyfriends, and they were like, look, you're a really attractive girl, but you're not that attractive that all these people should be following you everywhere. You're not it was just like funny because it was a little bit of a humbling thing to me, like, to say, look, I think you're great, but there's something more going on here than that.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think I'd hire a bodyguard.
Yeah. It didn't happen daily, but it happened it happened frequently,
Sure.
And so that was feeding that fear that I had. That goes again back to abandonment issues that I had as a kid, not feeling protected, not feeling safe. So I think that, there's many things that I've had to go through in this lifetime, trust being broken, that trust being broken plays a huge role in empowerment, because once your trust has been broken so many times, what do you learn? You learn to trust yourself.
Yeah.
So
That's it.
so that's a great teacher. So people will be like, I just can't trust anyone. Who can you trust? You can trust yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's key. And then if someone, and if you can't trust other people, that's okay. You look at what they present and you decide, at that moment, is this what you want to allow into your life?
Yeah.
So, I really thank you for bringing that into my awareness, because I'd never really looked at that as coming from a place of being a victim, but that was the very behavior of being a victim.
Sure. Well, I can look back at this and I can see how different egoic structures were fed and lived through my consciousness, how that affected my relationship to others and myself, of course. And it was all about the level of fear, the sort of what sort of thoughts I had, and I had a lot of fear in my system. So I did grow a role or two or three, through the years. And it's very interesting to see that and sort of scan it and compare notes with others. And because darkness is very easily seen and felt when you're out of it, or at least partially out of it, and you start opening up and talking to people, then these observations and healings, they accelerate. Just reconnecting now, I've seen a lot just by what you've shared. And so people have to start talking to each other and comparing notes. And that's rare, because we've been trained to use non-communication. And non-communication for me is when egoic structures that are really separate from anyone else, they talk very shallowly, and they talk to get attention or approval. There's nothing wrong, but it is what it is. It's not really connection. But sharing these things, comparing notes from lives, and really helps opening up the whole system. And everybody has patterns to look at. Everybody has their own key. They are the key. Everybody can do this. And it's actually quite fun and relieving too.
Yeah, I agree. And the main reason that, I'm doing what I'm doing right now in these interviews and opening up these discussions is I feel like transparency is huge in healing the whole. Whether we want to admit it or not, there's no such thing as privacy, because we are in a universe where we first of all, our higher selves are very aware of what's going on always.
Yeah.
So if no one else is watching you, you're watching yourself. Okay,
That's very true.
You are your own observer watcher. Uh,
Yep.
so you have that, but then we came in here. We're co-creating this reality together, and so from that standpoint, at a higher self level, we're all observers, and we're all observing everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And so the illusion of privacy, the illusion of separation, division, all of these things, that they're exactly that. They are illusions. So,
Yeah.
so when we don't acknowledge that, then we are delusional in thinking that we're not already transparent. So why not bring it to the human level that and what we're experiencing right now and say, look, I have nothing to hide. This is who I am. Drop the guilt, drop the shame, drop the judgment, and realize that everyone's playing a role for one another, including the darkness.
Yeah.
And that's really, I'm going to keep pushing this, I think, because I have heard in my desire to bring all of this into our awareness that we have to be able to look at this darkness, to release it, because you can't live in a state of true neutral observation without accepting all of it.
Sure.
So when we are looking at this darkness, for you, when you were talking about, again, about it being parasitic and it coming from within ourselves, it's so important that we really do acknowledge that that darkness does exist in us, and it doesn't make us evil. It doesn't make darkness evil. It just is what it is for the experience.
Yeah, I agree. And it's very, quick to say, it's like a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, it's all evil, it's all bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if we just examine the bare patterning, there's a logic to madness as well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really mind or hate or I wasn't afraid of darkness because it had real power. I was afraid of it because I had identified with it.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Yeah. So that identification freeze frames it. It stops the process where we're supposed to look at it. Look. No, I don't want to look.
Mm-hmm.
I am evil. I am weak. I am stupid. I have done this. I'm not good enough. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that freeze frames it. It stops it, and it's actually just energy.
Yes.
The core of it, it's just compressed energy.
Mm-hmm.
And we can release it. We can go into that space within, because it's all space. No matter how compressed it is, it's space within it.
Mm-hmm.
And work with it, release it, heal it in our own manner. Sure.
Yeah. And I had just a great example of a good friend of mine, Emma Stowe. She shared something with me that was just really brilliant. She was talking about how it had been years since she had turned on the news. And I was thinking about, like, when you were talking about, it's not just family, it's politics, it's religion, it's all these different things.
Sure.
And she said, I just turned off the media because, for sure, when you turn on the news, you're going to get your share of bad. I mean, there's not very many uplifting, happy stories. So that fear is constantly being pumped into us, and all the negativity. And she's just has been a great example to me of what how to love someone to the best of our ability unconditionally in the state that we're currently living. And she said, I hadn't looked at it in a long time, but I just decided this would be the day that I looked at it. And she went through and she saw, the killings, the everything with the war, the shootings, the killings, everything that was just on every level of negativity that could be seen. And then she also was able to tap into this psychically. And when she did, she said that she looked at each situation, and she sat with each situation that she was seeing, and she felt the emotion, and she said, and I love you, and I love you, and I love you. And she went through each scenario, and with every devastation and every horror that she was seeing, she injected love.
Brilliant. And that's very effective too.
Yes. And that was like huge to me, because this was at a point where I wasn't exactly there yet. And I'm like, wow, if I could just get to that point, like, to really not be reactionary. And so to me, to be in a space of neutral observation and in a feeling state at the same time, to where you are empathetic and compassionate, that is like the purest form of love that I think anyone can express in this duality that we exist in. The closest to the purest form of love that we can experience outside of being our whole sanctified self.
I agree, and it was such a relief for me to understand that I had judged myself. I did have a rather poor relationship with myself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really see it initially. You just can't detect it because it's baked in. It's woven into the culture, and everybody does it. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But then so now I think I'm all right. You know, I like myself.
Yeah.
I enjoy the planet. You know, and that frees everything. It's miraculous. And who knew that judging yourself could weigh you down in that system?
Mm-hmm.
That it's that important to love yourself, not to run away from yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very simple. If you can be with yourself and love yourself, it'll spread outward, you know. It'll spread outward. Everything else will defrost, accelerate. Manifestations is very simple then, because you don't manifest from negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to grow something in poison. You know, you can't. You have to have a, you know, fertile soil and water and everything. You know, it's like, but growing from negativity is impossible. You can just copy and paste. It's all artificial.
Mm-hmm.
But then you start manifesting from feeling all right, you know, being calm with yourself, being your own friend, and then things start happening. Actually, you can manifest consciously, and it makes sense. You
Yeah.
manifest from the heart then.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, very much
Yeah,
so.
from love. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't want to cut you off. You can, if you need to
yeah.
cut.
That was pretty much it.
Okay. You know, it's true because if I look now, and I may have shared this when I've talked with other people. I'm not really sure, but I'll share it again because it's appropriate for this conversation. I
Mm-hmm.
can remember times when, um, well, I never thought I was pretty, even if I was functioning from a place that it may have come across as that I did think so. I think it was that maybe people thought that I was pretty, so they thought that I knew I was pretty. And I never felt that. And I never felt intelligent. I never felt pretty. I never felt worthy. And if you gave me a compliment, it made me so uncomfortable. It made me feel like you were making fun of me. Like,
Yeah,
it's
me
like a
too.
joke.
Yeah,
And I didn't want you to see me like that either. Like, I don't want you to even look at me. Like, I'm kind of thinking like, I'm just kind of here. Like, I didn't get seen as a kid. Why are you seeing me now?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember manifesting a horrible acne. My whole body was covered in it. And that was something I manifested over a few years, actually, because I felt like that. I felt like a complete monster. Then I came into this phase where I was very. It, 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 People might think I was vain. My hair had to be perfect and clothing, but I wasn't. I was a sort of like a perfectionist. I never felt good enough, and people misunderstood that as if I was, you know, I liked my appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can read these patterns in entertainment, you know, and people they don't really love themselves. Many of them they have to be perfect 24/7, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And then they compete. And then there's another young face and another pretty face. This is an industry that thrives on the feeling of lack.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't love themselves. So I could read these patterns very easily. And so it appears that people are, you know, they like their appearance. They overcompensate. But the truth is they don't feel pretty inside.
Right.
It's very simple. And all these things are very hidden. So people lash out and they say, oh, he's so vain, she's like this, oh, that industry is so shallow. But you end up being compassionate and you understand that they're just studying or processing lack
Mm-hmm.
or not feeling good enough through that particular system, entertainment or show business or whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't feel whole, many of them.
Right. Well, that's why you see so many addicted to drugs and alcohol
Yes.
and the suicide that, that takes
Yeah.
place as well. So yeah. And it's really easy. I know that it's easier to talk about love and it's easier to talk about light, but we're already that organically. That is who we are. And
Yeah.
so part of this compression and this duality is not to be love and light. It's actually that we already are. And here we are
Yeah.
experiencing these darkest sides of our personality, the experiences that we've created. And really it's about integrating. And this is where we get back to neutral observation. So after we've gone through this process of experience and how dark it can really be, that's the integration back to center. That is
Mm-hmm.
neutral observation. And, for everyone that's like, I'm just so tired. I'm just so tired of this reality. I just want to go home. I want to go home. Well, that's the way home.
Yeah, sure. That is, you are home.
Yeah.
That's the incredible thing. It's hidden in plain view in some respects, and it is very tricky when you're in it. My God. Because I know, because I tricked myself very, very well. And you end up then finding yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a beautiful, beautiful encounter. It's a perfect meeting. It's just, it becomes, because you become the answer to all your questions,
Mm-hmm.
the fabric of your dreams, whatever.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it's so simple. Love is very simple and powerful. And darkness has to use a lot of copy and paste, complexity, roles, masks to hide, because it doesn't have an independent power. It is parasitical. We have to think it and create it into form through unconsciousness. And it keeps repeating itself again and again, collectively as well, until it's healed, through opening, looking at it, and healing it, not repressing it and projecting it. And we can do this, I think.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
In
Yeah, you
time.
expressed, yeah, that was beautiful. And it is now I can say that I do love myself. And and here's the difference. This is the difference in really loving yourself and just saying you love yourself, or being actually coming from a place of ego. It's really like, okay, I love myself. That means I love the fat roll on my stomach. I love
Yeah.
the fact that I'm becoming an older woman. I love the fact that I could be that I can just go somewhere and be myself and say what I want to say, being who I am, and know that I'm not looking for someone to agree with me. I'm not looking for someone to accept me. I'm not looking for someone to give me praise or adoration or to fill some void inside of me. When you are talking to Patricia, you're going to get Patricia.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be whatever I have to say is what's going to be said. And one day my hair may be curly, one day it may be straight, one day I may be grumpy or happy or whatever. I mean,
Sure.
that's just
Yes.
part of the process.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and neutral, and that's the thing, like neutral observation for me, it's like I know that I haven't perfected it. I know that I'm still in this human body and I'm still going through these experiences. So I can still it's hard to trigger me, but there are times when I can be triggered. I'm still here. And then if I am triggered, I'm like, okay, what was that?
Sure. Yeah. Now that's a big relief for me, is not having to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That was another thing
Yeah.
that I convinced myself of. And actually, these days, I'm rediscovering myself very quickly. It's accelerating, and I love it. It's very weird and funny, and I'm just opening up. And it's incredible. Now I'm talking to you. That's just, it's magic. I just love this. It's a great life. And I have not, I'm not I'm not enlightened. I'm not finished. It's more like I feel more alive.
Yeah.
Just I'm alive. I'm sort of, and I do sense that I can taste the food now much more.
Mm-hmm.
I can really taste, or I can smell the air. I can really, so I feel like I'm just waking up. I'm alive, but
Mm-hmm.
not perfect.
Right. But perfectly here the way you're supposed to
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
So,
That's good enough.
yeah, that's good enough.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely,
that's
definitely.
definitely good enough. Well, anything else that you would like to share as far as, someone that's right now struggling with how they perceive themselves, struggling with actually being able to look at their dark side and the reaction they might be having to actually having to go there? Anything that you can share with them that you feel would be helpful? Was I clear on that?
Very clear.
Okay.
You can't really miss it because you have created for yourself so many opportunities to open up. There's doors everywhere, keys, there's circumstances. It's always there around us. It can be a friend, a neighbor, something you read. But I think if there's one thing, don't be too hard on yourself, because you are your own judge. And don't panic, because we're just rediscovering, waking up to the fact that we need to heal some wounds. And if you have a wound, if you have pain, it means that you're starting to process that which you can heal. We're going to heal. We have to do it together, comparing notes, talking together, rediscovering things together. And so you're not alone. Don't be afraid of pain. Don't be afraid of vulnerability. This is a good time because we can actually talk about fear, anger, vulnerability, weakness. That means that we're starting to do something very different than repressing and saying, here's the bad guy, this is a bad woman, this is a bad thing. It's a different stage when we're saying there's something wrong here. I'm not sure what it is, but I'd like to find out. So whatever you do, stop judging yourself. Don't judge yourself, because that's the root. And then if you really judge yourself, the world seems like this very dark place. It's all havoc. Give yourself credit for even talking about fear. Give yourself credit for even talking about anger. Give yourself credit. It's an incredible thing to be in the matrix when everything comes up, to even have one day of peace, an hour, 5 minutes. Give yourself credit, and we're going to make it. It's going to be fine. I feel that there's going to be peace on this planet in every individual. I feel that this is accelerating. I can sense it. That's one of the reasons why I'm so cheerful. And I wasn't always cheerful. So give yourself credit, and thank you. Thank you for even being here. Thank you for even going through the days they're on this planet. It's incredible how much people endure, how much they go through, carry day to day. They work, they provide, they sit down, they try to drink, they try to sleep, they try to do something. It's all weird. It's like everything collapses.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's all a little bit airy, but we're healing. We are healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's turmoil. It seems like havoc, but thank you for being here. Everyone, the dark representations, we need them.
Mm-hmm.
We need the dark. We're all human, in human form. The dark ones, the light ones, the ones in between. We're all perfect, and we're healing together.
Very awesome. Very awesome. Thank you so much. And just to add to that, I also want to say thank you very much. And just remember that in you any of you coming out and sharing your story. That's so empowering. Sharing your fears, sharing your weaknesses, sharing your challenges is so empowering to other people. And the more transparent I become, becomes, and anyone else becomes, the more we open up this love that we're all seeking, that we want to be a part of again, that the lack of separation back into unity and harmony with one another. That's what we all want, and that's what
Right.
we're all striving for. So in order for us to reach that point of center and to really integrate all of these experiences and become just that, this is what it takes. And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate you sharing today. I feel like this has just been beautiful. I feel like,
Me too.
oh, thank you. And I feel like, your writing is just incredible. So I want to share this again. Bjorn's website is neutralobservation.com. Please check it out. Because there's just so many beautiful things that he's written there, and I feel that it will be inspiring and helpful to you in just taking a look at it. And, I hope to do this again sometime in the future, because I feel like this was a really good exchange, and I feel like it'll be really helpful to others.
I would like to do this again. This was absolutely brilliant. The first time we connected, and so this was just, it worked out very, very well. So thank you so much, Patricia.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. And thank you. I feel like it too. And see, I love to do this on the fly like that, because I feel like,
Yeah.
it's authentic. It's, two people that have never spoken before, and we're showing exactly what we can do as humanity when we come together and we're just raw.
This has been a great moment, because it's like we already know each other, right?
Yeah, it is. Exactly.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And we will do it again. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.